Hey guys, my name is Sydney. Sorry. Hey guys, my name is Sydney, and today we are going to be doing magical potions. So, we're going to start out by reading a chapter from Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. This is the illustrated version, which I really like. So, I'm going to read a chapter about Harry's first time going to potions class. So let's get started. This is chapter 8, and it's called The Potions Master. There, look. Where? Next to the tall kid with the red hair. Wearing the glasses? Did you see his face? Did you see his scar? Whispers followed Harry from the moment he left his dormitory the next day. People queuing outside classrooms stood on tiptoe to get a look at him, or doubled back to pass him in the corridors again, staring. Harry wished they wouldn't, because he was just trying to concentrate on finding his way to classes. There were 142 staircases at Hogwarts, wide, sweeping ones, narrow, rickety ones, some that led somewhere different on a Friday, some with a vanishing step halfway up that you had to remember to jump. Then there were doors that wouldn't be open unless you asked politely or tickled them in exactly the right spot. Then doors that weren't really doors at all, but solid walls, just pretending. It was also very hard to remember where anything was because it all seemed to move around a lot. The people in the portraits kept going to visit each other, and Harry was sure the coats of armor could walk. The ghosts didn't help either. It was always a nasty shock when one of them glided suddenly through a glass door you were trying to open. Even worse, there was Peeves. If it was possible to get worse than that, it was the caretaker, Argus Filch. Harry and Ron managed to get on the wrong side of him on their first morning. Filch Filch found them trying to force their way through a door which unluckily turned out to be the entrance to the out of bounds corridor on the third floor. He wouldn't believe they were lost, and was sure that they were trying to break into it on purpose, and was threatening to lock them in the dungeons when they were rescued by Professor Quirrell, who was passing by. Filch owned a cat called Mrs. Norris, a scrawny, dust-colored creature with bulging, lamp-like eyes just like Filch's. She patrolled the corridors alone. Break a rule in front of her, put just one toe out of line, and she'd whisk off for Filch, who'd appear wheezing 2 seconds later. Filch knew the secret passageways of the school better than anyone, except perhaps the Weasley twins, and could pop as suddenly as any of the ghosts. The students all hated him, and it was the dearest ambition of many to give Miss Norris a good kick. Easily the most boring lesson was History of Magic, which was the only class taught by a ghost. Professor Binns had been very old indeed when he had fallen asleep in front of the staff room fire and got up the next morning to teach, leaving his body behind him. Binns droned on and on while they scribbled down names and dates and got Emmerich the Evil and Eric the Oddball mixed up. Professor Flitwick, the charms teacher, was a little tiny wizard who had to stand on a pile of books to see over his desk. At the start of their first lesson, he took the register, and when he reached Harry's name, he gave an excited squeak and toppled out of sight. Professor McGonagall was again different. Harry had been quite right to think she wasn't a teacher to cross, strict and clever. She gave them a talking to the moment they had sat down in the first class. Then she changed her desk into a pig and back again. They were all very impressed and couldn't wait to get started, but soon realized they weren't going to be changing the furniture and animals for a very long time. Harry was very relieved to find out he wasn't miles behind everyone else. Lots of people had come from Muggle families, and like him, hadn't had any idea that they were witches and wizards until recently. There was so much to learn that even people like Ron didn't have that much of a head start. Friday was an important day for Harry and Ron. They finally managed to find their way down to the Great Hall for breakfast, without getting lost once. "What have we got today?" Harry asked Ron as he poured sugar on his porridge. "Double potions with the Slytherins," said Ron. "Snape's head of Slytherin House. They say he always favors them. We'll be able to see if it's true." "Wish McGonagall favored us," said Harry. Professor McGonagall was head of Gryffindor House, but it hadn't stopped her from giving them a huge pile of homework the day before. Hedwig hadn't brought Harry anything in the mail so far. She sometimes flew in to nibble his ear and have a bit of toast before going off to sleep. in the owlry with the other school owls. This morning, however, she fluttered down between the marmalade and the sugar bowl and dropped a note on Harry's plate. Harry tore it open at once. "Dear Harry," it said, in a very untidy scrawl, "I know you get Friday afternoons off, so would you like to come and have a cup of tea with me around 3? I want to hear all about your first week. Send us an answer back with Hedwig. Hagrid." Harry borrowed Ron's quill and scribbled, "Yes, please see you later," on the back of the note and sent Hedwig off again. It was lucky that Harry had tea with Hagrid to look forward to, because the potions lesson turned out to be the worst thing that had happened to him so far. At the start of the term banquet, Harry had got the idea that Professor Snape disliked him. By the end of the first potions lesson, he knew he'd been wrong. Snape didn't dislike Harry, he hated him. Potions lessons took place down in one of the dungeons. It was colder here than up in the main castle, and would have been quite creepy enough without the pickled animals floating in glass jars all around the walls. Snape, like Flitwick, started the class by taking the register, and like Flitwick, he paused at Harry's name. "Ah, yes," he said softly. "Harry Potter, our new celebrity." Draco Malfoy and his friends, Crabbe and Goyle, sniggered in behind their hands. Snape finished calling the names and looked up at the class. His eyes were black like Hagrid's, but they had none of Hagrid's warmth. They were cold and empty and made you think of dark tunnels. Here's the picture. So that's Snape. You can't really see, but it's kind of creepy. "You're here to learn the subtle science and exact art of potion making," he began. He spoke in barely more than a whisper, but they caught every single word. Snape had the gift of keeping a class silent without effort. "As there is little foolish wand waving here, many of you will hardly believe this is magic. I don't expect you will really understand the beauty of the softly simmering cauldron with its shimmering fumes, the delicate power of liquids that creep through human veins, bewitching the mind, ensnaring the senses. I can teach you how to bottle fame, brew glory, even stopper death. If you aren't as big as a bunch of dunderheads as usually I have to teach." More silence followed this speech. Hermione Granger was on the edge of her seat and looked desperate to start proving that she wasn't a dunderhead. "Potter, what would I get if I added powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood?" Powdered root of what to an infusion of what? Harry glanced at Ron, who looked as stumped as he was. Hermione's hands shot into the air. "I don't know, sir," said Harry. Snape's lips curled into a sneer. "Tut, tut. Fame clearly isn't everything." He ignored Hermione's hand. "Let's try again, Potter. Where would you look if I told you to find me a Beelzar?" Hermione stretched her hand as high into the air as it would go without her leaving her seat, but Harry didn't have the faintest idea what a Bezoar was. He tried not to look at Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle, who were shaking with laughter. "I don't know, sir. Thought you wouldn't open a book before coming, eh, Potter?" Harry forced himself to keep looking straight into those cold eyes. He had looked through his books at the Dursleys, but did Snape expect him to remember everything in 1,000 magical herbs and fungi? Snape was still ignoring Hermione's quivering hand. "What's the difference, Potter, between Monkshood and Wolfsbane?" At this, Hermione stood up, her hands stretching towards the dungeon ceiling. "I don't know," said Harry quietly. "I think Hermione does, though. Why don't you try her?" "Sit down," he snapped at Hermione. "For your information, Potter, asphodel and wormwood make a sleeping potion so powerful it's known as the Draught of Living Death. A bezoar is a stone taken from the stomach of a goat, and it will save you from most poisons. As for monkshood and wolfsbane, they are the same plant, which also goes by the name aconite. Well, why aren't you copying that down?" I'm going to stop there. So that is Harry's first experience of potions class. So we're going to kind of have our own Muggle potions class right now. We're going to make 3 different potions. The first one that we're going to make is called the Magic Cloud. So for this one, you need a clear jar or glass or anything. I have this just clear mason jar. You need a smaller cup or container. So I have my little cauldron that I'm going to use. And then all you need is water, which I have in this cup right here. I'm using blue food coloring. So these are all things that you should be able to find in your house. That's kind of why it's Muggle potions, because if we were in Harry Potter, there's all these fancy potions materials that we could use. But here, we're just going to use stuff that we can find in our kitchen or our laundry room. And then the last thing you need for this one is shaving cream. So I have shaving cream right here. So to start, I'm just pouring some of the water into my small cup, about halfway up. And then I am going to put a few drops of this blue food coloring. And then you just need to mix it. So I'm just using an old pen that doesn't work very well anymore. Mix it up a little bit so that it turns blue. Beautiful. I also have a towel down just in case anything spills, so that it doesn't ruin my table. So now that we have that, we are going to fill the clear glass about halfway. And it's about halfway. And then we're going to fill it the rest of the way with the shaving cream. Careful it doesn't spill over. That's what the towel on the table's for. So that's almost done. And then you're just going to kind of let it sit for a minute. It's got to kind of melt into the water a little bit. And while we do that, we are going to start on our second one. So this one is called Witch's Goop. So I'm just gonna put this one to the side and it's just gonna sit into the water, okay? And Witch's Goop, we are going to start with cornstarch. So I have some cornstarch here and I'm just pouring it into my bowl. I just have a small bowl, that should work. You can also use I am so sorry guys. I don't know, someone's trying to get into my house. My doorbell keeps ringing. So I have some cornstarch in here, and then I am going to put some water. And then to finalize my goop, I'm going to put some green food dye. Sorry guys. My music stopped. Hold on. I'm going to put my music back on. 1 second. One sec. Okay. And then I'm going to use my pen again to mix this. And then if it's too much liquid, like mine's pretty liquidy, so I can I'm sorry, my music still isn't playing. That's so weird. There we go. Now it's playing. Okay, so mix it up. If it's too watery like this is, you just need to add more cornstarch. So I added more cornstarch, and I'm going to mix the rest of that. It kind of gets a little, you might even want to use your hands. I have some paper towels nearby just in case I need to do that, because all of my cornstarch is sticking on the bottom. So it might be better to do that. And then you might want to let that sit for a minute. Again, I have paper towels to wipe my hands off just in case it's too dirty. Oh, my hands are all green now. So now we're going to go back to our magic cloud one. So now we see that this has kind of gone into the water a bit, which is perfect. Okay, My music keeps stopping. So we're gonna use the food coloring water that we have right here, and start pouring it a little bit at a time. If you have a dropper, uh, you can use that as well. So I'm just gonna pour though. This is where your towel will come in handy because it's definitely gonna make a mess. Do you see what the water's doing with the food dye? That's so cool. And so it's kind of like a cloud that you would see outside. Very cool. So that is our magic cloud. And you can kind of see how the blue dye is coming down, kind of like rain from a cloud, right? And you can add as much as you want to that. Very cool. Okay, so let's check on our witch's goop. That was the magic cloud. I'm gonna put that to the side for now. Our witch's goop, mine is still kind of liquidy, but it's kind of cool looking, huh? And if you add enough cornstarch, it's gonna turn almost into like slime, which will be kind of cool. Make sure you're not making too much of a mess, because I'm making kind of a big mess. Okay, the last one we're doing is kind of gross. I need to pour this out, so I'm just gonna pour it into here. And then I'm gonna wipe out my awesome. So the last one is called boogie juice. So if you're ready, this one's kind of gross. We are going to start with water, which I have here. Awesome. And then a little bit of vinegar. Okay. And then I'm going to use yellow or green food coloring. To make my water green. So we see that. Nice. Okay. Now this is the gross part. You're going to add your boogies, which are, it's just oil. So, if you look at the top, you're going to see, I can't really show it on the screen, but once you pour the oil in, you're going to see that your boogies are going to float to the top. It's kind of gross, but it's kind of cool to watch. So what happens there is that the oil and the water and the vinegar react so that the oil just floats to the top. It's pretty cool. So those are our 3 potions. I'll go through the ingredients again one more time if you want to make them on your own or make them again. We have our witch's goop, which was cornstarch and water. So you can just get that at a store, keep it in your kitchen. The second one that we did was the magic cloud, which was water, blue food coloring, and shaving cream. Just white plain shaving cream. I got this one from Target, I think. So that one's pretty easy as well and pretty cool to watch. And then the last one we did was the boogie juice. So that was water with green food coloring, and then I just used olive oil. But you could also use a different kind of oil, like vegetable oil or something. So I just had olive oil in there. So those are our Harry Potter potions for the day. I am sure that I'll be able to do more another time. These were super fun and got to play with a little science as well as have a little magic for the day. So I will definitely be doing more potions later on. Thank you guys for tuning in. And I hope that I can see some pictures of all of your cool potions because everybody's is going to probably look a little different. So I'm really excited, especially that magic cloud. I think is going to be super cool. So I'd love to see pictures of what you guys are doing, and I will see you next time. Bye. Have a good day.